You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am here with Mr. Brett Newcomb.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. I just want to encourage everybody before we start to go to michaelmahan.org, which is my new revised website. Check it out. Look around, see if there's anything that you find fascinating and helpful, or anything that you find not helpful and cumbersome, and give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. Be gentle. Don't say mean things because
you're sensitive.
I'm just a sensitive person.
Yeah. We've all said that about you.
Well, people have said many various things about me.
Yes.
Some people have said, yes, you seem awfully sensitive. Yeah. Then some people say,
I don't think I know anyone that knows you that said you're very sensitive.
yeah, I know. I don't think, well, I think you know that I am. I think my wife knows that I am. I think my wife thinks that I'm a big baby. But, yeah, I think that there are a lot of people
you have to get past the facade.
Yeah, that's what you've always said.
Yeah.
You got to get past the facade. Yeah. Which I would say people should just do, and that should always be your goal. You should always be wanting to get past the facade.
I don't know. We all project facades according to what our agenda is, what our desires are, and our audience.
So Jung called that the persona.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, it's.
I call it the facade.
Yeah.
Who in the hell is he that I should care about him?
You shouldn't.
Yeah. That's my shadow.
But you don't think that that people should try and get beyond just the superficial?
I think people should have some awareness of their performance style and whether or not they're choosing it.
Gotcha.
I don't think you're handed it and say, here, like a set of clothes, you have to wear these, or a uniform.
Gotcha.
I think you choose it. And so if you're not getting the kind of reaction you want to get, maybe you need to change your style.
Gotcha. But that's on the part of the individual. But if you're being a friend, do you think that a person should be invested in saying, I'm not going to judge books by their covers?
I think that I don't have an opinion about that.
Okay.
I have an opinion about how I should be and how I want to be. I have some perspective on how I would like others to view me, but I also have some perspectives about how, when I look in the mirror, I want to see certain things. I want to be the man I wish I was.
Yeah.
I want to be the person I wish I was. So I try as best I can to approach that, but I don't make it all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not always the person I want to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes I experience road rage. I don't want to be the person that experiences road rage. Sometimes I get mad because the people around me are not getting out of my way and letting me go first. Because I'm special and I need to be first. I don't like being that person.
But you only feel like it's your job to monitor you. You wouldn't necessarily feel like it's your job to encourage others, because you were a therapist for a long time.
I think I want to understand people.
Yeah.
So if my next door neighbor is in a crappy mood and he barks at me about something, and I have a long frame of reference of how I know him. And so I put that in perspective and say, well, gosh, what's wrong with Bob? Do I need to go over and say, hey, Bob, how you doing, man? You barked at me. Do I need to apologize? Is there something I can do? If I care. And if I don't care, I can say, yeah, he's a jerk. To hell with him. I'm going to do more of that just to make him mad.
Yeah.
I mean, so people make those choices all the time. Whether they consciously make them or not becomes the question. Because if I'm unconsciously creating too much negativity, then my life is going to be miserable.
We also have that as a function of a larger context, right? So you're always very quick to point out that people are members of tribes, they're members of cultures, they're members.
Yeah.
And so I had sent today some information on Yuri Bronfenbrunner, who I know that you already know, his ecological theory of development, and it's one of the main theories that we teach in human development. But when you say those things, it reminds me of that, that we're all embedded in a larger context that we sometimes don't really pay attention to.
We may not even know the larger dimensions. We live in Missouri. We live in an urban part of Missouri. We are anomalies for the average Missourian.
Well, and you were saying in another show, you were talking about Josh Hawley, who's a senator from Missouri, who's, just talking about how men are at a disadvantage because feminism is just ruining our lives.
Yeah.
And, we have a very real possibility, if not probability, here in Missouri where Josh Hawley could be the senior senator and Eric Greitens could be the junior senator.
Well, Josh Hawley will be the senior senator because Roy Blunt's going to retire.
Right. Whoever runs. But that Eric Greitens could run, he could win, and we would have two men who were the representatives of the entire state of Missouri who have that philosophy, and yet that would not be the philosophy of the overwhelming majority of the population, I would argue. The population centers being St. Louis and Kansas City, and then very sparse in most of the other state, in the rest of the state. Numbers-wise, my guess would be that wouldn't be the preponderance of the view of most citizens in the state of Missouri, even though that may be our political representation. But we're embedded in that reality, whether or not we agree with it or not.
Yeah, there's so much beneath that. Many in Missouri tend to fall into the pattern of being one-issue candidates. And so if you're on my side of this particular issue, I don't care about the rest of what you think or how you present yourself. You can be whatever, as long as you are in favor of this, whatever it might be. Allowing minors to smoke cigarettes, legalizing marijuana, canceling the gas tax, whatever it might be, that's my hardcore issue. If you're on the right side of that, then it doesn't matter what else you do. So I think many people in this country vote that way. The other ingredients are the way the electoral divisions are designed within the state, and every 10 years there's a census, and then they're all redesigned, although running for senator is a statewide issue, so they run across all those areas. The pattern in Missouri seems to be that if you win the primary of the Republican Party, you're going to be elected to statewide office. The Democrats run candidates, but the Democratic candidates rarely win statewide elections. So we live in an area, in a state, where we are in the minority almost all the time. So you just have to get used to that, or you have to move.
And so just to touch on the ecological systems theory, just to flesh it out, that you have the individual who's at the heart of that, and then you have the microsystem, which is your family and all of the
family, clan, tribe,
that you're embedded in and have direct relationship with. Then you have the mesosystem, which is the interaction of those microsystem units. So how the school interacts with your parents, or how the other kids in your class interact with your siblings. And then you have the exosystem, which is all of the stuff that's around you, like governmental authorities, your church, and, well, I guess church would actually be a part of the microsystem. But those things that are larger. And then you have the chronosystem, which is how things change over time. But one of the reasons why I had sent this to you is because I was thinking about this, and I was looking at it, and in Bronfenbrunner, who was doing this in the 70s, he was at his peak during the 70s. When he was talking about this, the mass media, so he calls it the mass media, was in the macro system. And or actually in the exosystem, right? And what I'm wondering is, nowadays, have we actually taken media and put it in the microsystem because of the way that technology has changed?
Yeah. Yeah, we have.
Yeah, so I think so too. And I think that's scary.
When you and I grew up, I'm older than you are, but when you and I grew up...
Yeah, you're 15 minutes older than me.
There were 3 national television channels. And you watched those or you watched nothing. That's what you had, ABC, CBS, and NBC. And they presented the news the way they presented the news. And most people were more focused on their local community newspaper for news than they were the national television news. But the technology has changed to the point now where in today's newspaper, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Tony Messenger has written an article about an 11-year-old girl who was kicked out of her Catholic school because she posted what the Catholic school interpreted as an assaultive comment to some of her friends who were being mean to her. And they said, well, you can't come to the school anymore. Because so the lesson here, and the article goes further to say, the parents need to be aware of the technology access that their children have, and need to teach them the boundaries of that, so that they don't get themselves in it. I mean, what this girl said when I read it didn't particularly cause me any anxiety or concern about the safety of the school. But the people at the school said, well, you can't come to school here anymore. And because she was kicked out of a Catholic school, she couldn't be accepted at any of the other Catholic schools. And so now the poor thing is having to go to a public school. And her family's all distraught, and they're saying there's something wrong with this system. But part of the lesson is that the parents have a responsibility now of tracking the media usage and exposure of their kids.
But also,
which as counselors, we've had that conversation a lot.
We're also talking, though, about the interaction between the social media and the school and the parents, which puts it in the microsystem.
And the other kids.
And that never happened. In the 1970s, mass media never touched on your parents or on your school. But I remember when the Catholic institutions, the Catholic schools in St. Louis, went to giving all of their kids computers, and we were working for a group practice that worked for the Archdiocese at the time, and it was my job to go to a meeting with the bishop, the Archbishop in St. Louis at the time, and kind of coach him up on what Facebook was. Because the schools were saying, can we kick somebody out because they post something on Facebook that's against our code of conduct? And so that was the first time that I ever, and this was years and years and years ago, but that was the first time that I ever was directly aware of the media, which should be in the exosystem, actually contacting someone in the microsystem, because now they were, or in the mesosystem at least, because now they were saying, hey, this media is going to touch on the school, and we may have to go to the parents and break our contract with them to let this person attend school here because of something that they say. And I don't know that that's a good thing. I don't know that it's a bad thing. It's just a thing, but it's a thing that we ought to be aware of.
Well, but even at the more microcosm level, as a parent of a 12-year-old child, 11-year-old child, I want to know that my child is being sexted by someone. Maybe he has a 12, 13, 14-year-old friend in the neighborhood. They have the technology to take pictures of themselves and send those pictures to my child, doing whatever they're doing, that I don't know my child is getting unless I look at my child's device. And so when I was counseling families, I would say, you need to be aware. If you have computers and you get your child a computer, slave your child's computer to yours. Well, I don't know how to do that. Well, you better learn how to do it so that you can check and see what they're doing, where they're going, what kind of messages they're getting. And you can talk to them about it if you want to, if you think that's of value.
So let's take our break, and we'll come back and we'll pick that up.
One of the reasons that I want to participate in this show is because it gives me an opportunity to clinically review my understanding of what therapy is and how it works, especially for the consumer. So my hope is that we will find conversations that broaden my understanding of that.
And my hope is that we do that in a way that is useful but also entertaining for people, so that they want to listen, not only because they're getting good psychology information, but because they just enjoy the show.
Easy listening with an informational twist. So
That's a new tagline.
They're not sitting there going, huh?
Easy listening with an informational twist.
I'm really good at this. I'm a professional.
You're a professional. If it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back. Now, back when I was telling this story about the Catholic schools were going to start giving out laptops to the kids, that was obviously the message that we were sending. Put a program on your child's computer so that you can pull up all of their keystrokes, find out where they're going,
keystroke
check
logger
their phones.
of some kind.
And I have to say, I just think we're past that. I don't think that's even realistic.
We are too.
I mean, the kids
for one thing, the companies,
smartphones,
corporations started doing it.
Yeah,
and they wanted to put keyloggers on the computer. So how much time on task did your employee spend?
Right.
But the employees then had to find workarounds so that the boss couldn't come in and say your cigarette break is too long, or you're taking too many of them, or you're making personal calls. What's going on here? People resist that, and they go underground with what they do, but they find ways around it. And that response to the technology is now outdated.
Right.
So
I
is
guess
where the chrono system comes in.
Yeah.
The system keeps changing.
Yes, very well done.
I'm a professional.
You're a professional. But the reason, the whole reason why I had sent you this today and why I wanted to talk about, first off, I hear you say clan, tribe, and everything, and like I said, that always makes me think of Yuri, and I don't know that you always think of Yuri when you say that, but that's what it makes me think of. But at the same time, I have read books. What's the gal's name that wrote iGen? Anyway, I'm blanking on her name. Yeah. But I've read books on this situation where what used to be in the exosystem has moved into, they don't say it this way, they say, mass media or social media is invading your child's life in a way that you may not be aware of, just like you said with the sexting. Right. And you need to be aware of it, but I don't know that anybody's ever looked at it through this Yuri Bronfenbrenner ecological developmental lens, and I think it might be something that would be worth looking at, because we've taken what used to be in the exosystem and put it at least into the mesosystem, if not into the microsystem, and I think that is foundationally different. And I think that Yuri's system makes a lot of sense. So I would encourage people to look at the information that'll be posted on the show notes. But I don't even know what the goal is, but I think that it matters that these things are happening. And I think that if we don't pay attention to it, then it's going to manifest itself in ways that we may not be paying attention to and may be harmful.
Well, one of the most obvious examples of that is that there's a substantial number of people in America that believe the COVID vaccination shot is a scam by Bill Gates to put some kind of digital device inside your body so that they can track you all the time and know where you are. And the people who argue about that are the ones who carry cell phones, which is hysterical.
Right. And just for context, Bill Gates did an interview where he said, in Europe, they could do this. He never even said in the United States that they could put this marker in there. And that way, when you pass by somebody who's got a cell phone, it would create a marker. And that way they could track where you were at. And if you came in contact with someone who did then test positive for COVID, you would get an immediate alert on your phone. It was completely anonymous. Right. But it wasn't even, he was just saying that could happen.
The technology is possible.
But then somebody picked up on it and said, Bill Gates is putting trackers, which we already know there are trackers in every single smartphone that's ever been produced. Because after 9/11, that was required by law. Yeah. That you had to be able to track a cell phone. So you won't give up your cell phone, But you're worried about
and you don't even know what your cell phone is capable of doing.
I mean,
when you walk through the Target store and you've been looking for toilet paper, you get an alert saying, "Hey, we have toilet paper on sale."
Right.
So how do they know that?
How do they know that?
Yeah, well, they know it because the technology tracks
to your child, "Hey, put toilet paper on the list," and the smartphone
Alexa
can hear
machine
that.
Heard you.
Yeah. And so you're right. It's absolutely amazing that people are not willing to think about the technology that they do have, and then are all up in arms about technology that doesn't exist. But okay, so first off, do you think that I'm onto something, that this is that this phenomenon that used to be a part of the exosystem has now at least entered into the mesosystem, and that matters?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you think the effect of that is? Do you think that it is an effect? Do you think, because it's obviously a part of the Chronos system, that it's changed over time? Do you think that it's just a natural evolution, or do you think that this actually signals something that is foundationally different?
I don't think I'm smart enough to know. What I think is that technology continues to change, and we continue to pursue technological change to the extent that we're trying to develop programs that, if you're blind, can hook you to a computer that sees for you.
Yeah.
And so you can regain your sight and
Right.
be able to drive a car and walk in the woods. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Right.
There are always concerns about how much government control comes with the technology. And so if you're sitting at home at night and you say, "I hate Joe Biden," will the FBI come up and knock on your door? It's possible that could happen. Is that what we want? Is that how we want to use technology? So we have to realize that technology just is. And how are we going to use it, and how are we going to control it?
Right.
It's kind of like the old Chinese meme about riding the tiger. You ride the tiger, it's getting off that's the problem.
Right. Well, and it's also goes back to, a gun never killed anybody. A person with a gun is what kills people.
Yeah.
I mean, so you can use that to support whichever side of the argument you want to be on.
Exactly.
And so if we don't think about how we want the technology to be used, if we don't even consider it, then the technology is going to evolve, and it's going to integrate itself into our lives in ways that we may not be consciously aware of until it's too late. And I don't know that we're actually thinking about these things in any way.
So therein is the rub. How much are we actually thinking?
Yeah.
Period. About anything.
Yeah. And maybe you and I don't care because we're not going to be around long enough for the evolution to come to some kind of real manifestation.
But we both have children and hope to have.
But that's what I was going to say. But even
if you don't think it's your immediately personal concern, it's still a societal concern. And I still think, with all of its drawbacks, this is the best system in the world.
Yeah, I agree. But let me, to end the show, let's go back to one thing that I still struggle with. Back when we first started to struggle with this issue, because you remember when I went to the Archdiocese, went to the Regali Center and did that meeting. And at the time, our message was pretty clear. Put the keystroke logger on your kids' devices, pay attention, don't give them cell phones without monitoring what they're doing. And now we both have said that we think that ship sailed. What do you think solid advice is for a parent today? Because I see people giving their kids, I go to First Watch on Sundays to have breakfast, and I see parents handing little babies who can't talk.
Grocery store. Cell phone, let them play a game or something. Yeah.
And so the kids know how to navigate the devices before they even learn how to talk.
And probably better than their parents do.
Absolutely.
By the time they're 10, 12.
So what is the advice today for parents? Because I think parents still need to know. You want to know if your child's getting sexted messages. I want to know that.
I think the piece of that stands out for me, and it's very personal, is that parents need to spend time talking to their kids about their values, about the risks, about the behaviors, not in a preachy way. I mean, I remember when my child was 12, 13, I bought him a computer. He needed it for school. And I slaved it to mine so that I could check where he was going, what sites was he going to. And I found that he was going to some pornography sites. So I had a conversation with him about pornography. He got all huffy puffy and it's like, well, I'm a man and men, are visually stimulated.
Sure.
And, and so this is just normal. And I said, yeah, it is within a range. And so my concern as a parent is, what's the range that you're in? How much time are you spending? And how extreme and bizarre are the things you're looking at? And if I am aware that there's too much of either of those things, then we're going to have more conversations about this. So then he defended himself by being all huffy and puffy, and men have sexual needs, and I'm now becoming sexualized, and blah, blah, blah. And it's not a big deal. I said, well, if it's not a big deal, let's get your mother in here and see what she thinks about this conversation, because there's some concern about pornography's impact on women and its messaging about women. And he started crying. He's like, no. I said, well, that's interesting that you have that reaction, because that means that there's something wrong with that. So let's talk about it. So let's have a conversation, not for me to impose my will on you, but to teach you as a parent how to think your way through some of the choices you're making and understand what some of the risks are that you're going to face.
So our message may no longer be monitor the kids through some type of means of tracking.
It never was just monitor them.
Yeah.
Parent them, talk to them, teach them. That's your job.
And it takes acceptance and responsibility rather than responsibility to really do that.
Well, in that case, it takes both. I have a responsibility for my child to raise them and make them safe and to teach them how to survive in the world. But I have a responsibility to learn how they think, what exposure they have to risk, how they handle it, what skill sets they have, and help them acquire skill sets they need.
Yeah. It's hard to be a parent. And I know it was hard to be a parent when my kids were little. And I don't know that it's gotten harder, but when I think about the ways in which, or the things that parents have to deal with today, it feels like it might be more complex than when my kids were little, but maybe that's just looking back at the good old days.
No, I think it's harder. I think it's more complex. The standards are breaking down. The institutions are shattering. So the absolute certainty about one thing or another is now beset with ambivalence and other choices. So we're not as capable of drawing a clean line somewhere.
Yeah. Well, that's a good place to end this. So please go to michaelmahan.org and look around. Let me know what you think about that. If you want to follow us, you can follow us at Psych with Mike on Facebook and Twitter. As always, the music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. And if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.